All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Thursday. Tomorrow's Halloween. Who's dressing up? Dressing up?
Today is Tuesday.
Well,
Yeah.
every day is Twins Day for you guys.
Yeah, we always dressing like same.
True.
And tomorrow, because I wanted to dress something, but Linda emailed us that for peony, you can't like wear a custom clothes.
Okay.
Because of that, I changed my mind.
You can't wear it. You can't wear it. You can't wear it well because you're gonna be wearing like a jacket, or
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, that was always that was always the difficult part for me, because when I was young and I would go trick or treating for candy to houses. I lived in Edmonton, and a lot of Halloweens there was actually snow on the ground and it was cold, and so you'd get your costume on, but then you'd have to put on like your parka and your toque and your mitts, and so nobody could really tell what your costume was anyway because you were all bundled up. So yeah,
This is our first experience of Halloween because we don't have something like this in our country.
Yeah.
And it's new for us.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's a fun little event, right? Doesn't mean anything. It's just fun. Okay, so Kayla's here. Morning, Kayla. Let's jump back into where we were yesterday, talking about China and talking about Confucius, right? And so we watched a part of this Confucius documentary, trying to learn a little bit about him. I asked you a bunch of questions. I asked you a bunch of questions.
We answered the question until question 5.
So question 5?
Yeah.
Okay.
Give me a sec to check.
You get organized, and while you get organized, I'll ask you, what are these two kind of cosmic forces? Phoenix and the dragon. And what does the dragon kind of represent?
Sky.
And the phoenix?
Earth.
Right. And what are these? What's this dragon and phoenix doing? Nothing. Sitting around.
Symbol.
They're symbols of,
Cosmic.
this kind of cosmic struggle, right? The interaction between the sky and the earth, right? The cosmos and matter, right? They're constantly battling it out, struggling. And what's the role of humans in all this? Apparently.
Obey them.
To what? To obey them? No.
Follow.
To what?
Follow.
Follow them?
Obey.
No. Come on. You've got to...
Rebalance.
Yeah, right? So the role of humans is to kind of bring balance to these forces, right? And so there's all kinds of rituals going on, all the way from the king to people in their individual houses doing these rituals. Okay, Felicia and Kenny, are you settled there? Okay. So there's this constant kind of battle between these two forces, or sort of tension between the two forces. And the what? Are they? That was kind of how it was described. They're in some sort of struggle of some sort. And humans have to bring balance to this, right? So this is kind of the world that Confucius grows up in. But as they mention in the documentary, he's kind of a little bit, here's a fancy word for you, there's some cognitive dissonance for him. Have you ever heard that term before? Cognitive dissonance. It's when your thinking is kind of disrupted by something that doesn't make sense. Okay? Lots of times you'll see this in science class, where a science teacher will show you something that goes against what you think should happen. Cognitive dissonance, right? So here Confucius is experiencing some cognitive dissonance as well, because he's seeing all of these rituals played out to bring order to the universe, and yet he's living in the warring states period, where there is no order, it's chaos and warfare all the time, right? And so he's like, what's going on here? We're constantly doing rituals to balance the universe, and the universe seems to be chaotic and wild and out of our control, right? So he kind of sets out, he encounters some Taoists, and what do the Taoists believe in? The way, right? Just like the Mandalorians, if anyone's watching it on Disney Plus. Anybody? No? No? Never mind then.
See the movie for a game?
See the movie for what?
You say, we will see the movie for like the second time. What is your question?
My question is, what do the Taoists believe?
The way?
The way. What is the way?
It means that
Huh?
What is the way?
Yeah.
Shoot.
It's like how the universe rules, like working.
Yeah,
Like,
kind
like
of.
what you do, you can't up and
Yeah,
down.
so
You
like
follow
you just
the
need to follow
Yeah.
the path that will, like you don't have to think about what's gonna happen in the future.
Yeah,
Just
if you
do what
happen,
happens here, what happens right now.
Ye-
When
oh,
you happen to follow it.
Yeah, it's kind of it's difficult to describe, right? Yeah.
spontaneous way of the universe.
Yeah, it's kind of the way of the universe, the way of nature, the will of, just whatever, whatever is kind of in control of our existence, just to follow that path, right? And so the Taoists say that society is kind of artificial, right? It's trying to create an artificial order on top of the natural one, right? It's ignoring the natural order and trying to create an artificial thing, right? So the Taoists are saying, no, yes, we're having all these problems in society, but the problem is that we're trying to force order on something when we should just accept the way of nature and the way of the universe, right? What does Confucius think of that?
They don't
don't
really
agree.
agree about that because they think like if we follow the Taoist view, we cannot solve the problem that's gonna happen in the future.
Okay.
Can we say indignation?
Can we say what?
Indignation
Yeah, there was some. Do you know what indignation means?
means like angry or something like that.
Kind of. Yeah, frustrated or angry. I believe Confucius's exact words were. No, it's not his exact words, but that's what he says, right? He says that these Taoists are trying to follow the way, but that just means that there's nothing to be done, right? You can't fix anything. Things just are as they are, and so just go with it, right? Just go with the flow. Just chill. Stop trying to fix everything or make everything one way or the other. Just yeah, right? Which is interesting because it's somewhat similar to what the Buddha was saying, right? The Buddha was saying you're so attached to the way things aren't, right? You're so attached to things you don't have, right? Or things that are not the way you want them to be. Or things that are the way you want them to be, but you're afraid that you'll lose them, right? You're so attached to that it makes you miserable. Just let go of that attachment, right? And the Taoists are kind of saying, maybe a similar thing, right? But they're saying, kind of go with the flow, right? Align yourself with the way of the universe, with the Tao, right? But of course, we know Confucius thinks that's bunk, right? He doesn't believe that. And so he goes off to kind of find his own answers. Now, how does the Zhou dynasty influence Confucius?
Maybe they say that you can't leave the bird in
Well, he says that about the Taoists, right? Yeah, he says we can't just go off and live in, with the birds and the animals. That's ridiculous, right? So that's the indignation, right? He's kind of like, ridiculous. Follow the Tao, right? That's kind of Confucius's reaction. But yeah, he is influenced or he is inspired by the Zhou. And keep in mind, the Zhou is kind of hundreds of years before him, right? So, What's that?
You know Confucius?
Yeah. So Confucius is kind of, when he's talking about the Zhou, that's in the past, right? So he's looking into the past. And what does he see there?
Do you have ritual in the past?
There's ritual in the
Not there's no
past.
ritual.
What?
Not in the ritual. In the job.
Yeah.
So society is against this. So he saw this happen, so he kind of his heart, his mind.
Yeah.
He wants to make people educate people.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, he's having thoughts in his mind. What else about the Zhou is inspiring him? They talk a little. They tell the story about the Duke of Zhou. Yeah. Do you kind of remember what happened? They made what? Okay. I'm going to help you out with the story here. So, the king of Zhou, who was Yoya, I believe. Yoya died, sorry. Yoya died, and his son, of course, became king afterwards. But Yoya's son was quite young, maybe like 10.
His uncle,
What's that?
is it correct? His uncle comes and get the kingdom when he like grew up.
Yeah.
He get the kingdom back to like the son because his place, the real place of the king is for like a young
Yes.
boy.
Yes.
And after that, the young boy take care of their uncle. I think.
Yes, but it's not really about the young boy, right? Because, yeah, go ahead.
It's like loyalty because of the family relation.
Yeah.
Because like, for example, the king doesn't have a child and the duke also doesn't have a child, so they pass it down to their nephew, and it becomes farm, and they don't have
Oh.
family relation.
Yeah, but that's kind of earlier, right? So let me help you out here. So what we're talking about is kind of like the golden age of the Zhou dynasty. Not when it's falling apart at the end, because that's exactly what happens. Fully shit falls apart. But earlier on, it's actually quite strong, right? And so, yeah, they tell the story of the king dies, his son, or maybe his nephew, I forget, is supposed to be king, but he's a child, right? And so the Duke of Zhou, hello, the Duke of Zhou steps in and acts as king, right? Until this child is old enough to be king himself. And then the Duke hands over power to the son and steps back and says, okay, it's yours now, right? Which is a very kind of loyal and kind of honorable thing to do, right? He had all the power, right? The Duke of Zhou had all the power. He could have just pushed the kid aside, right? Or maybe saw to it that the kid was in an accident, right? Something happened accidental to the kid and now he's right? But no, right? The Duke of Zhou protects this child, and when the child is old enough, hands over power to him, right? What a noble thing to do. What a loyal thing to do, right? And so Confucius is kind of looking back to this earlier Zhou period as a bit of a golden age, right? When things were perfect. And
Every dynasty have to repeat this.
and what?
Every dynasty.
Yeah.
Like have a golden age and have a new dynasty.
Yeah, exactly.
So like after Duke of Zhou, this no one do the same thing with him in the following dynasty.
Oh, and it happens again?
Because everyone think it's stupid. No, this never happen again.
They
This
don't
is
have
stupid.
any loyalty to their family anymore.
Yeah, in other.
Oh, like later on.
Yeah, they don't nothing.
Yeah. Later on, it's not like that.
Yeah, not like that.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing about golden ages, right? Sometimes we, either in our countries or in our societies, we look at the past and we're like, oh, that was a golden age back then, right? If only things could be like that now. And again, when golden ages are kind of imagined, right? People are looking at the past and seeing what they want to see. They're not really seeing how it actually was, but they're inspirational, right? They're nostalgic. They make people feel good. They inspire people in the present, even though they're not really looking at an accurate version of the past. But either way, Confucius is looking back and seeing, you know, a golden age, right? When people behaved appropriately and correctly, right? Rather than just trying to kill each other and take the guy next door's kingdom, right? So, oh yeah, and I think we can answer this last question. I think we saw that, didn't we? Can we answer this next question or not? I feel like we were maybe halfway through that answer and then or halfway through that section of the documentary and then we didn't get it.
We didn't watch all of the movie.
Definitely not.
In 25 or
Yeah.
2 seconds, something like that.
Yeah, I think we're just about to come to that. Okay, so we'll remember that question for the moment. Yeah, so I've got some answers here. We've kind of gone through these, so I won't go through them again. That's ridiculous. We're going to watch the second half of this documentary. We'll have to pay attention to that. We'll have to remember that one question of how these ancient rites kind of inspired Confucius. But we'll hear a little bit more in this section of the documentary about how he felt about music, what he felt his mission was, a little bit about father-son relationships, students, sharpening their intellectual skills, the most difficult virtue to attain. How does one attain it? And then, how do Confucius's ideas finally become popularized? Okay. What do you think the most difficult virtue to attain is? What's that? Loyalty? I think it's hardest to be loyal? Yeah. Well, what do you think? What do you think is the thing that we should try to be that's the most difficult thing to be? Like being obedient?
Not obedient, like just following his mind and concept. He at first something that Confucius expect you to do. It's not obedience.
No.
Like it's just like Ashoka. He expect his city something else.
Right?
This is the most difficult for them because there are so many rules and every people has different background.
So just behaving according to expectation is the most difficult thing? Yeah? What do you think? What's the most difficult? All the things that we should try to do and try to be, what do you think the most difficult one is? What's the most difficult thing? Well, maybe we'll have some more ideas after we watch Confucius here. So, let me just see here. Now, for online people, same link as yesterday. Again, there's two links in Microsoft Teams. One of them is the first link has subtitles, has closed captioning. The other one does not. Okay, so it's up to you. It's up to you which one you wanna look at. I'm just going to put the questions in there. There we go. So the new questions are in Microsoft Teams for you as well. And I'm going to keep my fingers crossed here because I did a stupid thing. And I unfortunately clicked on downloading and installing the new operating system on my computer. So it's downloading it now. I'm hoping that it's not going to start reinstalling my operating system while we're watching the movie. Hopefully it will ask me first, but I guess we'll find out. I guess I can cancel it. No, there's still an hour to go. I'm okay, right? It's not gonna install the operating system right in the middle of my class, is it? I hope not. Hopefully it'll ask me. Okay, so we'll watch the second half of this. We'll answer these questions and then we'll have a break after that, okay? So let's do that. Online people, the link and the questions are in Microsoft Teams, and we'll see you at the end of the documentary, okay? Okay, and we're back. So, let's look at that last question there. Where was it? Where was it? Where was it? There it is. Yeah, what kind of philosophy does Confucius come up with based on those ancient rites? That was right when we started watching today.
Well, family, I think.
No, before the family thing.
Or you should treat your people like he saw when people die, they treat them
Oh, yeah.
kindness and stuff. They respect them. But then when and then he said like when the people live, you should also like respect them as well, not only when they are when they die.
Right? There was that piece, right? The idea that if you should focus on the living, because if you don't know how to take care of the living, how are you going to know how to take care of the dead, right? So yeah, there was that piece to it. Victoria?
Also, like, he noticed that the father-son thing, and the better thought of everyone as like the children, there would be more like forgiveness in the world.
Yeah, that's kind of more of the answer to number 10, but that is correct, right? Is that he kind of made an analogy between fathers and sons and the sort of the king and the people, right? He kind of made a comparison there, and so that's very true and very correct for number 10. But what does he notice? What is his thing? Because he's got a bunch of rules, right? About how rituals should be done and how you should dress and how you should walk and how you should shake hands and how you should place your sitting mat on the ground so that you can sit down. Everything's got kind of rules and correct ways to do things. What's the deal with all that? How does it matter how you sit or how you write or how you shake hands?
It shows your characters as a person. It shows your futures.
Right? So it kind of shows your character, which is one piece of it, yes. Shows your character. But what else? What is the point of doing all these things? You know, if you're just going to sit down,
It's an application.
it's what?
It's a kind of application of like because he had students like you try to educate because he want to review the rules at that time. So like doing things like following rules and it's kind of like they will spread out. So like his student will spread it out.
Yeah.
So that makes the society is following the political stuff.
It makes society.
Like following, go back to the right track.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the things he's hoping, right? Is to get, and that's kind of that's almost the answer to question 9, right? Is that he's, his mission is to kind of get society back on track, right? To have society act in a virtuous way, because right now, as we mentioned, it's chaos and everybody's acting poorly and selfishly and improperly, and Confucius is trying to get people back on the right track, right? But what does it matter? What does it matter how you walk and how you set things down and how you shake hands and how you bow to people and making sure that your dress and everything is just so.
It's like we're following the rules of the society.
Yeah, you're following the rules, okay, and what will that do?
Shape what you're gonna be in the future.
Yeah, exactly, right? So Confucius is saying that, when you do all of these things, and of course he seems to have rules and sort of, proper ways of doing everything, his idea is that you have to do all these things, but you also have to mean them, right? You also have to be thinking about doing these things properly. And so he says if you do, then that will have an influence on the way you are inside. If you do things with care and respect and diligence, then that will make you careful or caring and respectful and diligent, right? I don't know if you've ever heard, I don't know where this comes from, but I heard it somewhere. Have you ever heard of the way you do something is the way you do everything? Right? So if you're sloppy and careless when you do one thing, the idea is that you're going to be sloppy and careless when you do other things too, right? So if you are careful with everything that you do, that will ensure that you remain careful and diligent with everything you do, right? So Confucius is saying that the action will create the good character, right? It doesn't necessarily come from inside, but if you make yourself do these things in a particular way, it will improve your character, right? That's what he says. So he takes these, this is what that scholar is talking about. He takes these ancient rites, right, from the past, brings them into the present and says, if you do these things with care, that will help make you a virtuous person, right? That will make you a careful, diligent person. Does that make sense? Sort of? Yeah. This is a quick one. What does he feel about music?
It's like music is for worship,
It has
it's
professional.
It has what?
It has professional harmonies, music that
Yeah.
she was reading.
Yeah.
She told it has professional harmonies. Maybe it can these harmonies can be relax people.
Yeah.
They use it about 2,500 years ago for meditation.
Yeah.
And for meditation.
Yeah, it's part of, music is an important part of ritual in this period, right? And so people would have used these instruments, for ritual, but also just for enjoyment, right? But what is it about playing an instrument?
In the past or now?
Anyone? What?
it shows
People who are in music class can maybe answer this one.
You asked from now or in the last? In the past.
Either one.
music cannot be forgotten, so like music doesn't have like a time.
Music doesn't
So
have
it
a.
can be passed down from generation.
Sure, it absolutely can be passed down. But music is kind of an embodiment of Confucius's philosophy as well, right? Because if you're going to play music, not like press play, but if you're going to perform on an instrument, you have to be very careful and diligent, right? You have to stay with the tempo, you have to play the right notes, you have to play them at the right time, in the right sequence, you have to hold them for the right time value. If you don't do that, then you're not really playing the music, right? You're just making a bunch of noise, right? So, what?
You should be called.
Yeah, you have to be very conscientious, right? You have to be very diligent. You have to perform things in the correct way in order to get them to sound right? If you don't do all those things, and people in music class can attest to this, if you don't do all those things, it's not going to sound right? It just sounds like a bunch of chaotic mess, right? So Confucius likes music, well, probably just because he enjoyed it, but also because it kind of embodied his philosophy that you had to be diligent and careful and do things in the correct way. And if you did, of course, you would be able to make beautiful music, but it would also have an impact on who you were inside, right? If you did these things carefully and diligently, that would improve your character, right? It would build your character. So we kind of said, I think Kenny said that before, that his plan is to kind of influence people, right? To sort of fix society, right? And sort of get it back on track because it's lawless and chaotic and awful, right? So how do we get it back on the right track? What does he try to do first? Before the student thing, what does he try to do? Before the students.
Before the student?
Yeah.
Oh, family?
No. How's he gonna try to influence society?
You mean what she do? What did she do?
What? Yeah, like, well, what's he wants to get society back on track. How's he gonna do that?
She went to their home, I think.
Oh, yeah. No, this is Confucius, and it's before that.
So, is it about the father and son?
No. This is where he decides he's going to get a government job, right? He decides he's going to get a government job and try to influence kings and rulers that way, right? But it doesn't really pan out for him, right? His personality is annoying. People don't like him very much.
Yeah, it's hypocritical.
He's I don't know if he's hypocritical, but he's kind of arrogant,
Well,
right?
you can study what he, because we have like essay or
Yeah.
something, so like a photograph or some documentary. So it's from there's his student record what he speaks.
His
Like,
students
like what he said
Uh-huh.
when he is still alive, and we learn about this, what he speak to become like what he expects people to be. But all of it is hypocritical. It's not work in modern society.
So it was hypocritical in that
For
he.
me, it's hypocritical.
So for you, it's hypocritical.
Yeah. It doesn't work in modern society.
Do you know what that means?
Yeah, I know.
What does that mean?
Like, it's fake.
It's what?
It's fake.
In some ways, it's fake.
It's fake.
Yeah. When you're hypocritical, usually you say one thing and you do something else.
Yeah, that's true.
So Confucius was saying one thing but doing something different.
For me, like in my perspective, what he say, he expect maybe like people should do something, or like you should how you shake your hands,
Yeah.
how you speak, how your intonation.
Yep.
How,
But you
no
think-
one can actually follow it.
But but that's not hypocritical. That's just you don't agree, right? He's got all these rules and you think those are
Dumb.
ridiculous.
Dumb.
Okay. Yeah, that's not hypocritical. That's just you just think it's dumb. And that's okay. But it's just not the same thing, right? So but yeah, he does have a ton of rules, right? And I forget one of the rulers of the past, I think they quoted him yesterday, and they're like, yeah, he's got like 1 million rules, and like one lifetime would not be enough to learn all these things. You would need multiple lifetimes to learn all of his rules, right? So he had the same reaction that Kenny had, is that this is ridiculous.
That's why he died.
That's right, what? Okay. So let's get to this father-son thing because we really want to get to it. So again, how does this father-son relationship extend to rulers? What do we hear?
In
You guys are so polite.
If the father like treat their son with kindness and virtues, the son will like pass it down to their generation and generation. Will like shape the relation from father and son. So
Yeah.
it's like kind of linked system.
So we bring it to the top.
Yeah.
So if the ruler can treat his citizen like father to son,
Yeah.
then what he is expecting.
Yeah, and like the citizen will be like that as well.
So from small expanding to
Good. Yeah. So fathers and sons have a relationship, right? Sons have a duty to honor and obey and respect the father, right? And the father has a responsibility to love and provide for and be compassionate towards the son, right? Both of these people have responsibilities to the other, right? And Confucius says, let's just move that to the top, right? So if the ruler or the king thinks of himself as a father, he has to act with compassion and care and love for the people that he's ruling. And then the people that he's ruling will owe him their respect and allegiance, and they'll obey him, right? So he's trying to take this father-son relationship and extend it to the entire country, right? To all of ancient China, which actually sounds familiar because somebody else presented themselves as a father figure as well. Who was that? Who? Who?
Jesus?
Oh, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, but someone we talked about like a week ago.
Oh, Hitler.
What? We didn't talk about Hitler.
Oh.
Why does Hitler always come up? Why can we not go a single week without talking about Hitler? No, I'm just kidding.
check out that swastika.
Ugh, I'm going to start putting Baileys in my coffee. Who were we talking about last week?
Buddha?
He thought of himself as a father to the people he was ruling.
Buddha?
No. Yeah, there we. Who said it?
Shaka?
Yeah, Ashoka, right? Ashoka presented himself. He said all men are my children, right? And here Confucius is saying kind of a similar thing, right? That if rulers feel that way, they will rule better, right? And the people will owe them their respect and allegiance, right? Yikes! What was I asking in this question? The idea. How did this apply to governance? Oh, yeah, okay. So, how did Confucius select his students?
No matter, he didn't care about the background.
He didn't care about
The background of the student.
didn't care about their background. What did he care about?
Their character?
Their
Character?
character and their
Moral? Their character? How they respect others?
yeah, their moral character and maybe like their desire to learn,
Yes.
right? Because he said he wouldn't turn anyone away who came to him freely, right, and asked to learn, right? So he said it's not really about, it's not about aristocrats and peasants or anything like that. It's about who wants to learn, right? And who will devote themselves to the teaching, right? And so how does this apply to governance of society? Shoot, we're going to run out of time.
This affect the government, or like how this work on the government? The which, like what are you asking in the second question?
Let's say that one more time.
But how did this apply? So it's
Yeah.
like how they affect the government, or like how this work to the government?
How should the way that Confucius selected his students, how should that apply to government?
So like
Sing it?
They should choose the right rulers to rule the country, so
Yeah.
the country will become greater one that will rule with riches, not only with.
Yeah, it shouldn't be the member of a royal family, right? Or it shouldn't be just based on bloodline. It should be based on moral character, right? The best man, or well, I was going to say the best person, but in this part of history it's the best man. The best man is not necessarily the son of the king, right? Or the king himself. The best man is someone who has virtue, right? Who has character, right? Moral character. Okay, I'm going to press pause there because we've got a few minutes left. I had a request to go over the religion assignment. I'm not going to go over it in detail, but here's what I will say, okay? Now, when I was looking over it, I was looking to make sure that you understood. So it wasn't so much about saying the right thing or the wrong thing, but did you understand those characteristics of religion? So, for instance, the first characteristic of religion is that all religions believe that there is some sort of supernatural power or being or beings or something, and that there are specific people who know how to interact with the supernatural, right? And so, for instance, in Christianity, so this is kind of what I'm looking for. For instance, in Christianity, there's a God, right? They call him God, right? He has no name. They call him God. He's the one God, right? There's only one God. And in terms of people, we have usually priests, right? Sometimes we have bishops and cardinals and popes if you're a Catholic. If you're a Protestant, no. But there are priests who kind of help you to understand the will of God, to communicate with God and to pray to him. So the supernatural being is God, and the people who are sort of trained to interact with the supernatural power are priests, right? That's how we sort of lay that out. So what I wanted to see is that you understood what the characteristic meant and that you could see it in the religion that you studied, right? And so again, for Islam, I don't know that anyone did Islam, if I remember, but if you did Islam, of course, Allah is the supernatural being, right? He is God. He's, again, the only, the one God. And there are imams, right, who know how to speak to him and pray to him and understand his will and his teachings, right? They understand the Quran and they can explain things to people, right? So that's kind of what I wanted to see. And I did want to see that for each of them, right? I wanted you to sort of understand what the characteristic meant and be able to find it in the religion that you were studying, right? And most people did a reasonably good job with that, okay? The only other thing you had to do, I think if I remember, was to cite a source, okay? And so most of you did. It was supposed to be an MLA format. Some of you know that format really, really well, which was very impressive. Some of you need to do a little bit of work in terms of tuning it up. I would say that some people nailed it. A lot of people were kind of in the ballpark. They had most of the formatting. There was a few people who kind of didn't know what they were supposed to do or just didn't really look into it. But I think we were okay on that. We could spend a little more time on the MLA formatting thing. But really what I was looking for in this assignment is you to be able to recognize those things in the religion that you were studying. So in some ways it wasn't so much about right answer, wrong answer. It was about, do you understand this concept? Okay? Does that help a little bit?
Yes.
Does it? Okay. If you have other questions, I can answer them either, after class here or tomorrow. But that's kind of the thing I was looking for, okay?
Our homework related to our last homework religion that we
Yep.
chosen from that.
Yep.
For example, we chosen Buddha for our last homework, so
Yep.
we have to
Oh.
give some explain for Buddha.
Right. And so there's some, this is the last thing I'll say here and then I'll end this. There's some religions where, it's not like it was the transfer of power. I think it was number 4. The sort of transfer of power from the ruler to the deity or the legitimacy. Sometimes that's not quite so easy to pull out for some religions. And so if you said, I can't really find anything on this, it doesn't seem to be the case in this religion, that's okay. Because some religions do that thing really well, some of them don't. And so there are a few religions that if you said, I don't really see anything here in this way, that's okay because you're right. It's not really there. Okay? So, but that's all I'll say. I'll end it here, and I'll see you tomorrow for Halloween, where we will be dressing up, hopefully.
Sir, this assignment is due tomorrow?